I won't be putting it in the ground until I think it's 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. So that's why it's important to have that last frost date. Hello, howdy, and welcome back to another garden prep. I'm Kathryn and I'm the Aerogarden Homesteader. So today, I need to get my list out. Okay, so today we are going to work on deciding what seeds, and it's basically what seeds and when to start them. So I would like to go through, and I'm going to have tomatoes. This is just a rough idea of, I'm not going to have numbers here because until I can actually go out and measure these beds, which are under a foot of snow, I won't know how many I can do. So I'm just going to go overboard and plant a whole bunch because I know I can offload plants. There's a free group here. They always appreciate getting them. So I want to have tomatoes, obviously. So tomatoes. I just need to figure out what varieties. I like to do Roma or paste. So I will pick a type of Roma or paste. I like to have at least one slicer. Make that L look like an L. And I like to have little cherry tomatoes for salads. Those are my tomatoes. So I will put them down the middle of these two beds, and I will just put in however many I can and go from there. Now, I want to put in some, let me get a different color, I'm going to put in some like onion or garlic. I'm going to space that around. I will also be putting in some basil. I will also just sort of throw that in there. Now, something I want to take into account is the sun is coming from this direction. So I want to make sure that everything that's kind of in this back area can handle being in the shade, because the tomatoes will eventually shade it out. Now, for basil, that's fine. Basil is a cool weather crop. They don't really like the hot, the sun sort of beating on them. So this will work out fine for the basil in the back. The basil in the front, I can just accept that either I don't put it there and I put flowers, or it'll go to seed. Now, another thing that for my garden, my particular way things are growing is these are fruit trees. They will shade it out a little bit. So I just have to accept that. There's not much I can do about them. We put them in without forethought, or I guess thought of what was going to happen, because this was grass. So I will have some sort of herbs. I will also have, I guess, you know what, I'm going to try to make this a little more generic, alums. So I need to just decide what kind. And once I have my list of all the things that I want to have, I'm going to pick varieties. So once I've chosen those varieties, so for example, this Walla Walla onion, I'm going to look on the back. Now there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can look on the back. This is easy access. The plants normally come with something on the back that'll tell you approximately where you are. So I'm kind of in this purple-orange area. So it says I can start my plants anywhere between January and February. Or I could also start them in the fall, do like sometime August to October, and they could go over winter. Now I got to be careful with that because they're biennial, so the second year they will go to seed. So if I plant them in the fall and they get too big and then they go over winter, they might just bolt in the spring. So I got to be careful about that. So for my zone, so what I can do is I can go, it's going to pop up a bunch of ads. This is the Farmer's Almanac website. So I can go and look at onions. And you can see, I don't know if you can actually see my cursor, I guess not. So you can see the onions in the middle of the screen here. It says I can start them inside, and I can do this 10 to 12 weeks before the last frost, because I'm going to put them in the ground about, now you don't have to remember all this information off the top of your head. There's the website out there. There's like tons of information. There's actually too much information now, but you can go online and look it up for your zone. But this has to do with frost dates. So, even though I'm starting it indoors 10 to 12 weeks before the last frost, which means I need to start it probably next week, I won't be putting it in the ground until I think it's 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. So that's why it's important to have that last frost date. Once I have that, then I can decide when to start my seeds. So you count, boy, I can't spell. You count back. So you got frost date minus your 10 to 12 weeks is when you start your seeds. Then your planting date will be 4 to 6 weeks. It might actually be 6 to 8. I'm not 100% sure. This is for onions. Onions only. Okay? Now, peppers. I'm going to decide what peppers I want to grow, and hot peppers are slow. Okay? The bells, they're like a medium grower. Okay? So I'm going to actually start my hot peppers really soon. Probably shortly after I start my onions, I'm going to be prepping for peppers. Now I want to have my varieties, and God, I can't spell. I want to have my varieties so that I can figure out which ones I want. So I have lots of options. Let me see. These are just cheapo photo books that I got from the dollar store, and I put in my tomatoes. So I'm going to do some Romas. I got some Romas here. They're a bit old, but what I can show you, if I can find it, is dig to the bottom. This is actually how I seed save my tomatoes. So I take a piece of paper towel. I literally just blop on the, that gooey stuff that's full of seeds. I blop it on there and I let it dry. I let it dry really well because I'm just going to store it like this. When I want to seed, I peel it off. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you got to ferment your seeds, you got to do this, you got to do that. Do whatever you want. This works for me. And do you really think nature says to the tomato, oh no, we got to ferment your seeds first? Nah, it falls on the ground, it rots a little, and then seeds start sprouting in the spring. This is what I do, okay? So, your mileage may vary, but that's what I do. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick some herbs. I might do some cumin outside, probably plant different types of basil. I want to do some more tomatillos and probably some ground cherries, but I'm going to go through and I'm going to find the ones I want to grow, and I'm going to look on the back of the packet and I'm going to see what it suggests. So this one says probably May to June is when I can plant outdoors, which makes sense because my last frost date is in April, but I'm going to start them inside to give them a head start. So that is thing number one. Thing number two is, and I probably should have grabbed a better calendar for this. Where is my... Okay. So you don't really need to see all this crap, but see here? I have notes of what I did in previous years. So I'm going to take those notes and I'm going to put them on my new calendar for this year, and I'm going to track what I did. And that will let me know, because I always make notes. So one year I started my tomatoes in it was the beginning of February. They got long and leggy and it didn't work for me. So this year I'm going to, look at the back, I'm going to figure out what I need to do, but I'm also going to look at my notes and say, okay, well, I started my seeds last year, mid-February, for tomatoes. They did great. I was also able to move them outside and let them acclimate, right from seedlings. We're talking little tiny seedlings that were maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches tall. They had the first set of true leaves. But from there, I was able to put them outside, let them, acclimate during the day. They got the sun and all that. And then at night, I just brought them in so they wouldn't freeze. So this is going to give you your setup for what you're going to do for your seeds. Once you have your seeds, you got your, okay, I got to start my onions in January, I got to start my peppers late January, tomatoes mid-February, so on and so on. The Farmer's Almanac will say peas. You can use peas outside 4 to 6 weeks before the last frost. That kind of depends on your soil, kind of depends. If it's really, really boggy, you might want to start them inside and transplant them out when your soil dries out a little bit, because otherwise the seeds will probably just rot. If your ground is still covered in a ton of snow, you might want to wait. So we did get a late snow last year, that's why I mentioned the snow. Your warmer crops, like pumpkins and things, you can start those indoors 2 to 4 weeks before your last frost, but then put them out 2 to 4 weeks after your last frost. That way you get a nice little seedling that you can put in the ground. It's already got its thing, its strength going and all that. So I will show you, hopefully, if I can bring my soil in and thaw it, how I get my seedlings going. I got some strawberries on the table that are just doing really poorly. If they're not starting to look a little more perky, I might have to pull them and chuck them And so I might just be able to recycle that dirt. So I might not be able to show you how I mix up my dirt right away, but I will definitely show you how I do that. Just if you just want to grab like a potting mix or a seed starter mix, I used to do that and it's fine. Now I just mix cheap topsoil with cheap whatever compost, steer manure, mushroom leftover things I can find at the store, you know, with a bit of peat and vermiculite or perlite. I just mix those together and I use that. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I am starting my seeds more in flats this year than in individual cells, but that's just because some of them will do really well that way, like onions. Onions will do really well that way, and I can just prick them out or let them get big and then just tease them apart, which is what I did last year. It worked great. So, homework. If you don't already have your zone, which is, it's not that important, but zone is good if you're watching somebody on YouTube and they're like, oh hey, plant these 5 plants now! Except they're in zone 9 and you're in zone 3 and you're covered in snow. No, it's not going to work. Okay? Zone is good just for following other people and sort of basing it off of what they're doing. Oh, they're one zone before me or one zone after me, so I can adjust accordingly. The last frost date's really important because that's going to tell you when to start your seeds, okay? Because everything is kind of based on that last date. Once you have that and you have your list, we can start planting things next week. I'm in zone 7, as you can see, and my onions need to get planted like probably should be done this week, but I will wait till next week. So that's my first thing that needs to get done. So get your list of plants that you want to do, your dream list. Even if you don't have a garden, just look through a catalog, pick some plants, have fun with it. Let's do this on paper if you want, but at least do it for your area so you can kind of pay attention to what's going on with your weather and your stuff. So my garden, I have lots of space for things, but a lot of it, so this is going to be probably beans and peas, but it's going to be shaded out by these fruit trees. I do have strawberries in this area, so that's also going to limit things. I've got some strawberries here, so that takes out a whole bed, but I can put more climbing things here because I have another fence. So I just need to play around, figure out what I'm going to do, what varieties I can do, and I will go from there. So this is how I am doing it. I will make my list. I will actually physically pull out the seed packets and have them set off to the side in the order I need to do it. You know, I can be a little anal that way, but I'm going to like put all the onions on top and then the peppers and then probably the tomatoes. And then after that it'll be probably my beans, not my beans, sorry, my peas. Beans will be later, but the beans will probably go with like pumpkin and other summer squash things. So there we go. I hope you found this useful. If you did, it would be really nice if you can like and share so other people can also find this video. I want everyone to start a garden this year. I want you guys to start a garden and tag me and show me in the pictures. I think that YouTube allows you to tag, it's like at the Aerogarden Homesteader, so you can tag me. I don't know if that's off-site as well, but hey, let's get this going. We can do this. So any little space, even if it's just a little patio space, let's do this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when the next video comes out. I'm going to try to just do these ones weekly for a little bit until things sort of settle down and, you know, I've got all my seeds going. But yeah, let me know if there's anything you want to know more about or something more specific. I'll do what I can. I'm not an expert on this. I'm just a, you know, hey, I'm a YouTube yoo-hoo who's just doing this for fun. So I'm taking you along on how I am doing things and how I learned things. This is kind of what I felt was the easiest way to do it, is based on the frost date. There are some that are moon dates as well. You can kind of put those together, but you know, you can do what you want because it's your garden. But this is what I do. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when the next video comes out, and I will see you next time on the Aerogarden Homestead.